desperate circumstances, because there's no shortage of stories about them who can't find accommodation in Auckland. At the end of a week in which the Prime Minister said there are tons of houses to be had for under $500,000. One family's been helped out of its debt. Can I ask you about this? Helped out of its debt by private philanthropy of $1,160 to Housing New Zealand. And here's the dilemma. Housing New Zealand says this family was given many chances, eviction is always a last resort, etc. Are you happy that we now pledge to support everyone through thick and thin, whether they manage money well or not, whether they, whatever the reasons, we catch them and hold them? Is this what New Zealand should be doing no matter what?
No.
And better than it's doing at the moment? What do you reckon?
No.
No.
Yes.
No, because we resile from blaming the poor for their own poverty, of course, but some people are just useless. And think about if you were a landlord, I'm not talking Housing New Zealand, say you're a private landlord, your tenants didn't pay their rent, would pity overcome you at this point, or would you evict them?
I get that. I understand that. My concern is that the outcome is they are up to their eyeballs in something. And how they got there in the end is of less concern to me than, no, not of less concern, but it is of, what is of greater concern is that they're at them in the mire at that particular moment. And I don't want to live in a society that says, well, this was all your own making and so you're going to have to deal with it. Actually, I want, for the sake of the fact that we might not get it right and occasionally we may end up supporting people who've got their, through their own means, I would prefer to live in a society where actually, well, we just sort of shrugged about that.
So that's your full stop. However muddled their lives may be, whatever their circumstances, you've got to, in the end, plug up those cracks and put them back on their feet.
For me, at the end of the day, they're still in the mire. There's the fact that it got there because they didn't manage things very well becomes slightly secondary to the fact that they're in trouble. And I don't want to live in a world where we say, well, too bad, really.
Okay, then I'll give them some money, but I'd say make better choices, people.
Well, I mean...
As I gave it to them.
My wife's theory is that actually we should be pouring money into junior schools and actually having, a 1-to-5 ratio where actually what you got was an opportunity to provide all sorts of life skills, all sorts of... and that you'd get... ambulance at the top of the hill, not at the bottom thing. A lot of issues around, better eating, how to manage money, all sorts of things dealt with. And I agree with you, Lisa, there should be consequences, but I don't want to be in a space where we shrug and say, no, I'm sorry, you got here by yourself, now wander off.
No, you're right. But if you want to go to the media to shame the government, but you got there through your own bad, faulty judgment, I don't think you're an angel.
No, I accept that too. I do accept that. I'm seeing it very simplistically.
Nevertheless,
you're the good cop.
You're both reflecting the way that a lot of people see it, or somewhere on that continuum in between.
And it's grey. That's what it is. That's the trouble. But that's the world, and that's the life, and that's who we are. And you know what? I could make an awful lot of bad decisions between now and getting back to my car, in which case I want somebody to help me.
This weekend is Oamaru's big steampunk weekend. Just before we go, it's the steampunk capital of New Zealand. Thank you, Maggie. Yes, we did know that. Do you get steampunk?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, love it too.
What do you love about
what
it?
It's done? Oh, just everything. The combination of sci-fi and Victoriana. And can you imagine what Oamaru would be without it? It would just be bogans and penguins. I mean, it's really changed the whole face of that town. It's fabulous.
Jim, did you see the Karabossi fire display as part of the festival?
No.
If you didn't, it was extraordinary. Fire everywhere and lots of steampunk things.
I know.
I just think it was amazing.
I know, people were talking about it.
Nice.
And of course, speaking of Elon Musk, the vacuum tube method of transportation from the steampunk era,
Can't wait. Couldn't get in the tube in the first instance. I'd be like one of those cyclists needing to be on the footpath.
Lisa Scott, Michael Moynihan, thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend, both of you.
Happy long weekend, you guys.
And thanks, everybody. And Checkpoint is on the way.
Kia ora everyone, welcome to Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Sharon Brett-Kelly, and on behalf of the Checkpoint team, thanks for joining us. Tonight, a man has appeared in court charged with unlawful possession of a firearm after a 2-year-old girl was shot dead at her home. The Salvation Army says the government's claims about knocking on the cars of homeless people are wrong and have jeopardised its work with them. Residents of a Taranaki beach settlement say their homes will be swept into the sea unless something is done about erosion at East Beach in Waitara. And the Central Otago Mayor says the four-wheel drive group who got stuck in a snowstorm was silly and irresponsible. They'll try to get their cars out tomorrow. A Japanese boy lost for days in a forest is found alive. And a Kiwi model with a prosthetic leg inspiring people around the world. But first, here's Katrina Batten with RNZ News.
Talofa lava, good evening. A 26-year-old Auckland man was denied bail but granted interim name suppression when he appeared in the Manukau District Court this afternoon, charged with unlawful possession of a pistol. The charge was laid after a 2-year-old girl was shot dead at her Mangere home yesterday. Mohammed Hassan has been at the Manukau District Court.
A large number of family members and friends gathered outside the courtroom where prayers were sung and messages of support for the defendant were shared. The police recovered a sawn-off shotgun from the scene of the shooting and arrested the man a few hours later and charged him. They say more charges may yet be laid. The man is scheduled to appear in court on June the 24th. This is Mohammed Hassan.
The Salvation Army says false statements by the government this week have weakened its ability to work with the homeless. It says the Prime Minister, John Campbell, was wrong in saying that Ministry of Social Development staff accompanied Salvation Army personnel on a visit to homeless people in a South Auckland park. A spokesperson, Ian Hudson, says the agency deliberately declined an offer by ministry officials to accompany them, as many of the people being approached have a deep distrust of government officials.
I guess the main issue here for us is re-establishing the fact that we're concerned that we might lose some of that relationship with statements like this that will impair the way that we're able to help the people there.
Ian Hudson of the Salvation Army. The Labour leader Andrew Little says Mr Key has put the Salvation Army's working relationship with desperate families at risk, and he must explain why he misled the public.
If the Salvation Army are now saying that it's compromising their work, that's pretty disturbing, because we need folks like the Sallies and the Auckland City Mission and anybody else out there helping these folks until the government gets their act together to help them.
Andrew Little. The Prime Minister's office has issued a statement saying his comments were based on advice given to him. The Criminal Bar Association wants fees for legal aid lawyers raised to fix what it calls a struggling system. Last month's budget included a $96 million boost for legal aid, which the government says makes 2,700 more people eligible each year. However, the association's president, Noel Sainsbury, says a big problem not being addressed is a decline in legal aid lawyers because the work is not lucrative enough and fewer younger lawyers are signing up.
I teach Law Society, the Introduction to Criminal Law course. It's a prerequisite for doing legal aid. Over 5 years ago, you would have 80 to 120 lawyers a year. This year, we would have had probably about 35, and about half of those are people doing prosecution work or working for government departments.
Noel Sainsbury says more people are having to represent themselves in court. In far north Queensland, the police have called off the search for a crocodile thought to have killed a New Zealand woman. 46-year-old Cindy Waldron was seized off Thornton Beach in the Daintree region north of Cairns on Sunday night. She's not been seen since and is presumed dead. A 2.5-metre croc has been trapped in the area, but authorities don't believe it's the one responsible for the attack. The police now say there were no passengers on board a light plane that crash-landed in a Bay of Plenty paddock this afternoon. They say the plane hit the ground and rolled in a paddock just near the coastal settlement of Pukehina just before 2 o'clock. They had initially thought there were passengers. The pilot was unharmed. Drivers are being urged to take care this holiday weekend, with falling winter temperatures expected to make road conditions difficult. A Transport Agency spokesperson, Andy Nackstead, says preparation and driving to the conditions is key to staying safe.
With the temperatures dropping, the road surface can be slippery, so it's really important, just to be aware of that and to adjust your speed for the conditions. And sunstrike can also be an issue this time of year in the winter. So making sure that people are aware, taking extra care, and really, giving themselves plenty of time to get where they're going safely.
Andy Nackstead. Met Service says drivers should take special care on roads that are elevated or inland, as ice can linger for a long time in shaded areas. In sport, world tennis number ones Novak Djokovic and Serena Williams will feel like they're working overtime at the French Open tonight, with all 4 semi-finals crammed into one session. In a bid to ensure the rain-ravaged tournament finishes on schedule, Djokovic will be on court for a 4th day running and Williams for a 3rd, after the usual rest days were cancelled. Djokovic plays 13th seed Dominic Thiem of Austria, and 2nd seed Andy Murray plays 3rd seed Stan Wawrinka. Williams meets the unseeded Dutchwoman Kiki Bertens, while 4th seed Garbine Muguruza is up against the 21st seed Australia's Sam Stosur. A birdie blitz on the back nine has rocketed New Zealand golfer Danny Lee into a share of 3rd after the first round of the latest PGA Tour event in Ohio. Lee made 5 birdies and an eagle to card a 6 under 66, 2 behind outright leader Dustin Johnson. The reigning champions, the Golden State Warriors, have won the opening match of the NBA basketball finals, beating the Cleveland Cavaliers 104-89 in Oakland. Video replays are to be trialled in next season's A-League football competition. They'll be used to check on penalty kicks, red cards and goals scored from line ball offside calls, and the results won't be communicated to the on-field referee, so there'll be no impact on the match. If the trials is successful, their system could be introduced in 2017. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Fahana Haida, witness to one of the engineering marvels of the 21st century. Paul Kennedy talks Australian sport, including the non-event that was State of Origin 1, or was it just a good old-fashioned arm wrestle? Country Life meets a group using coffee and cake to cope with the dairy downturn. I assume cream gets in there as well. And we have a sonic tonic dedicated to perspective. On Nights, it helps to have some. After the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather to midnight tomorrow. Northland and Coromandel Peninsula fine, apart from isolated showers about the east coasts from tomorrow afternoon. For the remainder of the North Island, also Marlborough, Nelson, Buller, Westland and Canterbury fine with morning frosts in many areas. Otago mainly fine with morning frosts, but areas of low cloud for some lower lying inland areas tomorrow. Southland and Fiordland a few showers near the coast, gradually clearing tomorrow, mainly fine inland. And the Chatham Islands cloudy periods and the occasional shower. It's almost 8 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Katrina. An Auckland man charged with gun possession after the death of a 2-year-old girl has been denied bail. There were emotional scenes outside the Manukau District Court when the man in his 20s appeared this afternoon. The 2-year-old was shot dead at her family home in Mangere yesterday. Reporter Mohammed Hassan has been in court and joins me now in the Auckland studio. Mohammed, what happened in court?
Yes, Sharon. Well, a man in his 20s appeared at the Manukau District Court this afternoon. He is charged with 1 count of unlawful possession of a pistol, namely a sawn-off shotgun. There was a sawn-off shotgun that was found by police at the Favora Street home yesterday. He was visibly emotional in the courtroom. There was a lot of family members that were inside. He was crying at times. He was denied bail by the judge, with a slight exception. In the next few days, the funeral for the girl will be held. The date hasn't been set, but the judge has allowed him to be able to leave the police custody in order to attend that funeral. He is going to reappear at the Manukau District Court on June the 24th.
And there were emotional scenes at the court today?
Yes, there were. Now, as I mentioned, there was a large number of family members, around 40 or 50 family that attended. Not all of them could get inside the court, but beforehand, they sat outside in a large circle. They sang songs, they prayed, they sent messages of support for the defendant. After the courtroom, there was a lot of tension between the family members and the media. And there was one occasion where one of the journalists was shoulder barged by one of the family members or one of the relatives.
And police are still at the little girl's house?
Yes, that's right. Now, we were back at the Favona house earlier today. Cordons are still around the home, and police are still searching the front yard as well as the roof. They say it is still early stages in the investigation. They are still conducting forensic examinations, still speaking to witnesses, and they have said that there may be more charges laid at the end of the investigation.
Thanks, Mohammed. That's our reporter, Mohammed Hassan. A rift has opened up between the government and the Salvation Army over the homeless problem. After several weeks of publicity about the plight of people living in cars and garages, the government this week sent out so-called flying squads to offer assistance to people in Auckland. Here's what the Prime Minister John Campbell told reporters yesterday.
On, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday night, MSD and the Sallies went around and knocked on, I think, 8 cars that they could find. All 8 of those people refused to take support either from Sallies or from MSD. They went down to the city mission. Of the 8 people they could identify there that weren't known to them, 4 of them signed up and got support from MSD, and 4 of them, as I understand it, were considering their options.
So some people choose to live in cars? Is that
well, what I'm saying, I'm just simply saying of those 8 people that MSD and the Sallies could identify, knocked on the cars and asked them, can we give you support and can we give you help? Not just MSD, the Salvation Army, the 8 of them refused.
But the Salvation Army says it played absolutely no part in approaching homeless people in Bruce Pullman Park with ministry officials, and the government's incorrect statements have compromised its ability to work with vulnerable homeless people who are wary of officials. I spoke to Salvation Army Divisional Commander Ian Hudson a short time ago and began by asking him why the government managed to get the wrong end of the stick.
We think there's been some kind of miscommunication because we have not gone round with any MSD people at all. And also we haven't been knocking on doors. How we've tended to operate is we've taken a van there. We've been carefully developing relationships with people there, so they gaining their trust, and basically having a van where we've taken food or other things that they might need to help, and beginning to try and see how we can support, see if they're willing for us to mediate or support and advocate for them. So that's kind of what we've been doing, and no, we didn't. We weren't involved in any of that kind of what has been said to have happened. Yeah.
Were you aware of anyone from the Ministry of Social Development doing this?
They had asked us if we would want to participate in that, and we indicated that we would prefer working the way that we are, trying to develop that relationship with people. I guess the thing that we're concerned about is why we put the statement out is just to reassure particularly the people involved, but others that may be in similar situations, that that's not how we do things. We weren't involved in it, and just to put the record straight, really.
But did the Ministry of Social Development actually approach you to go around to people who were sleeping in their cars?
Yes, they asked if we thought that would be a good way of doing it, and we said we would prefer not to do that. I mean,
why is that, Ian? Why would you prefer not to do that?
Well, we had been working with them for about 4 weeks, and we wanted to, and we were sort of at a point. I guess the main issue here for us is re-establishing the fact that we're concerned that we might lose some of that relationship with statements like this that will impair the way that we're able to help the people there, because they trust us. Some of them have had, they're not confident with officials. I guess that's an answer to your question. Not always confident working with bureaucracy, maybe even had some things in the past that have where they haven't had a good experience or something. That's one of the main reason why we didn't really want to go at it that way.
So, Ian, has this made your life harder?
Well, we are concerned that it might, and that's why we made the statement. We want people to know that we work carefully with people. We build relationships and we advocate for them, and that we didn't operate in that kind of a way, and just want to reassure people that we intend to carry on as we have been in the past.
So is the government on the wrong track here?
Like I say, I think there's been a miscommunication. I think people are doing their best. The MSD is an organisation that we have good relationships with, and they do a lot of good, and we appreciate that, and most of the time we work very well with them. And so I think the way we're trying to approach it, I think, is the best way to help these people. And people have said they don't want help, and I would say that they don't want to live in a car, They don't want to live in a car, but sometimes it's just about how you go about it, what kind of help they want. So that's really what we're trying to get across.
So these so-called flying squads, what do you make of those?
I think what I think is it's good that people are trying to make a difference, trying to help people in need. I think they are a little bit misguided doing it in that way. I think it's better to work through the people that have developed the trust and try and see if we can solve it that kind of way.
And that was Ian Hudson, Salvation Army Divisional Commander. Meanwhile, a member of the Te Puia Marae says high rents have forced people into their cars, and children as young as 11 are continuing to live in bushes on the streets of South Auckland. John Kukutai works at the Kohanga Reo at the Te Puia Marae and has been working with Māori wardens at night, delivering food to the homeless and families living in their cars in Auckland parks. His most recent trip out was Wednesday night to Bruce Pullman Park at the same time and place the Prime Minister John Key was referring to earlier. John Kukutai recorded this video.
We're here in Papakura, just going for our walks. There's about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16 cars here. We're giving kai to a few of the whānaus in there, a few young ones. Couple old people sleeping in cars. So we're just going over to this paddock over here. I'll show you over here. And we see a few cars just parked up everywhere, sleeping. Bit emotional, seeing our own Māori people sleeping in their cars. It's pretty cold out here, and you think how they living in a squash car, even a family, mother and father, couple of kids in a car, too embarrassed or too shy to come to the marae to stay. So we just gave them a few kai, a few bottles of drinks. Why people stay here is because they've got toilets here that our whānaus can use. Just going around to the toilets now. There's about 14 cars here. Just all next to each other, just all sleeping, camping vans. Pretty sad. Here's the toilets. Yeah, so there's a few people there as well. What can I say? It's pretty sad.
And that's Te Puia Marae member John Kukutai. This afternoon I spoke with him and asked him why people were still living in their cars.
Well, I've been out a few nights now. Why? It's because they can't afford the rent.
Why aren't they going to the marae?
Well, a lot of them are shy because of media. So I've been out a few nights, and Wednesday night when I went out, I asked them, come to the marae. You get a hot shower, you get food, you get clothing. And all they're saying is because they're too shy and because of the media bombarding everything, and that's why that's happening.
So if the media weren't there, would they go to the marae?
Yeah, well,
you know, I still have the same issues as well, you know. Some are right to stay on their own out in their environment. Some families are not, but they've been coming slowly to the marae, which is really good.
And what are you doing for them?
So what I'm doing is, so I go out, when I go out at night, I take food to their cars, have a little bit of a talk, get a bit of a background about themselves, and asking them, hey, our marae is here to help. Our marae will feed you, our marae will clothe you, our marae will bed you. There's nothing shame about it. Because at the end of the day, that is our job, is to look
John,
up.
who are they? I mean, are they a mix of families and older people?
So on Wednesday night when I went, I had talked to a mother and father with a 2-year-old kid and also a 6-year-old boy in the car sleeping.
All of them?
All of them, yes. It was sad, you know. We've seen all ages, from families to single people, from the ages of 11 years old living on the street to the ages of 70 years old.
In their cars?
In their cars, yes. The ones on the streets living under bushes. I went to a place in Mangere here where young teenagers, the ages of 11, were staying in bushes.
With their family or on their own?
No, on their own. There was a lady there with them, helping them as well.
What are they doing staying in the bushes?
Because they've got nowhere to go.
Are they all the same family, or are they...
Oh, all sorts of families, really.
So how many people have you found staying in the bushes?
Well, Wednesday night there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 people.
Children?
Children, with a lady.
And were they taken to the marae?
Well, I tried to bring them to the marae, but they were too shy to come. So I said to them the second night, which I didn't attend, I said, if I see you fellas here again, you fellas will be coming in our van to come with us to the marae.
And what happened?
They went there. They said, yes, Matua will come. But then next night the wardens they went there.
And the people in the cars, what's it like for them? I mean, it must be really cold for them at the moment.
Yeah, well, with the family of 2 children, it was freezing. You know, it's squashed. Then they said, well, they can't stay anywhere else because they've got nowhere else to go. So I asked them, come to the marae. You know, we can help get you into a home maybe. But
And they wouldn't come?
They wouldn't come that night. But I've had a few people come Thursday morning. We've had a few families come, yes.
And the people in their cars, are they working? What do they do during the day?
So there's the couple with the baby, they were working. But it was just the rent. They couldn't afford paying rent to these people.
Can they afford food, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yes, they can afford food, yes. But we still give them food anyway, clothing, bed, blankets.
The Prime Minister, John Campbell, he said yesterday that the Ministry of Social Development and the Salvation Army knocked on the doors of 8 cars, but the people didn't want help. Is that what you're seeing as well? Do these people want help?
I don't know. It all depends how people approach them, you know? It's the way how you approach the people, that you go to the cars, you give a real friendly, warming talk, make them feel comfortable, and then you actually get to know them from there.
So they do want help?
Yeah, they do. The government, they do need help. Yeah.
But what do they want in the way of help? What do you think needs to happen next?
Well, I think it's because of the media being around us, the lights around us, the media, and I see that. Families wouldn't want to be put in the spot when media's around us.
And that's Te Puia Marae member John Kukutai. Meanwhile, when it comes to the housing haves rather than the have-nots, Auckland has overtaken Toronto as the world's, quote, hottest, unquote, luxury housing market. That's according to Christie's International Real Estate. which says, based on a survey of 100 markets, Auckland posted an incredible 63% growth in million-dollar-plus sales. That's US dollars. Its report cites migration as a key driver of Auckland's booming luxury property market and singles out overseas students, expats and affluent investors. Christie says New Zealand's strong economy, natural beauty and a friendly image are key selling points for New Zealand's foreign real estate buyers. And it says if you add in New Zealand's property laws, which do not include a stamp duty, capital gains tax or visa requirements, the result is one of the world's most attractive property markets for overseas buyers. If you want to know who New Zealand beat out to get the top ranking, Toronto took out second spot, while Victoria in British Columbia was in third place, followed by Valencia in Spain and San Francisco in fifth place. It's 25 minutes past 5. Coming up, a 7-year-old boy who went missing in woods in northern Japan 5 days ago after being left behind by his parents has been found alive. And residents of a Taranaki beach settlement say their homes will be swept into the sea unless something is done about erosion at East Beach in Waitara. We'd love to hear from you in any way you choose. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Facebook us, Checkpoint with John Campbell, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And don't forget, you can watch us online at rnz.co.nz/checkpoint or on Freeview Channel 50. Now, a Southland four-wheel drive group will attempt to recover their vehicles from the Old Man Range near Roxburgh in central Otago tomorrow. 38 people were forced to abandon their vehicles last month after spending a night in their cars in a snowstorm. Authorities originally said the vehicles would be stuck on the road over winter. This afternoon I spoke to the Central Otago District Mayor Tony Lepper and asked him what had changed.
What's changed is obviously they're quite valuable, but that's got nothing to do with us. There's a lot of vehicles up there, and it'll be a shame to see them there for the whole winter. So I believe that there's going to be a chance tomorrow to go in and get them. Our council stopped them from recovering them last week because the contractor who was going to do it hadn't submitted a traffic management plan and a road closure application, which is totally necessary up there because along with that comes a health and safety plan of how they're going to go about it. And I don't think anyone's going to get hurt in recovery, but our road could get hurt, and we don't want that being wrecked by a bulldozer. So they've submitted their plans. They've been approved today. They've got a 3-day window of opportunity to get up there. The road will be closed while they recover the vehicles, and we'll have people on site monitoring what's happening to our road.
And how will they actually get in?
They've got a bulldozer which is adapted to snow conditions, which just means it's a bit wider and got a different blade on it, I think, is how they're going to do it.
So the bulldozer will, take them all up there?
I think the bulldozer will go up on a transporter as far as it can, then it'll go in and I guess a winch will pull them out to wherever they can be driven from.
Oh, I see. So the bulldozer with the driver will go up there to each of the vehicles, pull them back to a point where people can get in their cars and drive them away?
Yeah, I'd imagine that's how it happens. I mean, the bulldozer will be making a snow road as it goes in, and that's one way of protecting the environment because the snow will cover up all our plants and drainage systems that we've got in there, so that should just be a road they'll be able to drive out on.
And how long is this expected to take?
I think the contractor said he could do it in a day, depending if everything went right, but that's why we've given them a 3-day window of opportunity, and we've given them most of the month as long as the weather's right. There's an old saying down here that snow in May never stays, so we might get a bit of a thaw at some stage in June, so if it doesn't work tomorrow, they'll be able to have another go later on.
So what are conditions like there at the moment? Is there a lot of snow on the ground?
There is certainly a lot of snow up where those vehicles are. I'm standing here looking at it now. It's as sort of low as it gets in winter, but sometimes that's probably a good thing because the bulldozer will just make a snow track and, we won't be hurting what's underneath it.
And who's paying for this?
I'm kind of hoping that the silly people who went up there are going to be paying for it, or certainly their insurance companies are, because going up there the weekend they did was really, in my opinion, quite dumb. So if it costs them a few dollars to get them out, well, bad luck.
So you're certain that they are going to pay for it?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it'll be either them or their insurance company will be.
It's not the
our council.
ratepayers.
You can say that again.
What happens if they get stuck again?
Oh, they won't get stuck again. I mean, the contractor who's doing the job is pretty reputable. He'll get them out. I've got no doubts about that.
So it sounds like you don't think the trip was a good idea in the first place.
No, it was a totally ridiculous idea. That track is hard work in the middle of summer. Central Otago doesn't get much rain, but we'd had about 10 days of rain before they went in there. And then, of course, we had the snow forecast as well. So even going in there in wet conditions ruins our environment. But unfortunately, four-wheel drivers quite like going into those conditions.
But does that mean that that road should have been closed earlier?
No, it's a track which you do at your own risk, and Southland's been closing it on their side for as many years as I can remember. I just think it was foolhardy, and most normal people would go when they could get through. There was probably no way they were going to get through that day.
Have you spoken to any of these people who went up there?
No, none at all. I was in Auckland when the first drama happened, and none of them have contacted me, but they have been in touch with our roading people.
And they're obviously putting them under a bit of pressure to get up there to get their cars because they don't want them to be ruined over winter?
Yeah, they have. And there was a wee bit of flack from the car owners last week about us not allowing them to go up there. But there was a hang of a lot more feedback from farm owners and the Department of Conservation. Lots of people rang me saying, well, good on you for stopping them because we don't want our environment up there ruined in any way.
And do you have any idea of what the original cost of that rescue mission is?
No idea. No one's talked to me about that. And I would imagine it was substantial because there was helicopters and all sorts of things put on standby.
Was the council involved in any way? I mean, did it come at any cost?
No, it hasn't come to any cost to us at all.
And that's the Central Otago District Mayor, Tony Lepper. Coming up, a seventh school has had to close because of a suspected outbreak of measles. The United States presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton launches a blistering attack on Republican rival Donald Trump. And the president of a prominent market in Vanuatu says the children of stallholders are going hungry because of a drop in tourist numbers following Cyclone Pam. First, here's Katrina Batten with the headlines.
A 26-year-old Auckland man has been denied bail but granted interim name suppression on a charge of unlawfully possessing a pistol. The charge was laid after a 2-year-old girl was shot dead at her home in Mangere yesterday. The Salvation Army says its ability to work with the homeless has been damaged by false statements made by the government. It says the Prime Minister, John Campbell, wrongly said that Ministry of Social Development staff accompanied Salvation Army personnel on a visit to homeless people in a South Auckland park. Salvation Army Divisional Commander Ian Hudson told Checkpoint many of the people the agency approaches distrust government officials, and the agency had deliberately declined the ministry's offer to accompany them. The Labour leader Andrew Little says Mr Key must explain why he misled the public. The Prime Minister's office has issued a statement saying the comments were based on advice provided to him. The Criminal Bar Association wants fees for legal aid lawyers raised to fix what it says is a struggling system. Last month's budget included a $96 million boost for legal aid, which the government says makes 2,700 more people eligible each year. However, the association says fewer younger lawyers are signing up because the work is not considered lucrative enough, and this is causing a decline in legal aid lawyers. Drivers are being urged to take care this holiday weekend, with winter temperatures expected to make road conditions difficult. The Transport Agency says preparation and driving to the conditions is key to staying safe. Met Service warns that special care is needed on roads that are elevated or inland, as ice can linger for a long time in shaded areas. State Highway 29 near Tauranga has reopened after being partially closed because of a serious crash, but the police say there are some delays from the earlier road closure. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6 with more news and sport.
Thank you, Katrina. Turning to business now with Nona Peltier. Nona, a couple of small New Zealand banks have produced strong full profit results. What's driving that growth?
Well, actually, the customers seem to really like these banks. So they're local banks. They're not owned by the Australian large banks, you know, the ANZ, BNZ, and so on. These are small banks. One of them is the Cooperative Bank, so it's a co-op bank. It's customer owned in a sense, and so the customers get rebates. They like that. They also like their app. Their mobile app is very popular. So here's a bank that had a full year net profit rise of 16%, which is a pretty smart increase, especially, interest rates are low and so margins are tight. But still, this company made $10.3 million in the year ended March, and that was a big increase. They said that their deposits are up, and even though the bank is small, it's certainly packing a punch. Also a bank in Taranaki, so this is the TSB Bank. This is the one that's based in New Plymouth. And again, this is another bank that's locally owned and very popular with its customers. They increased their revenue, their net profit quite substantially, $61.6 million compared with $25.5 million the year before. So that's more than twofold increase. Now, what's interesting with that particular bank was they really took a hit. They had lent some money to Solid Energy, and then, of course, that debt was no good. They couldn't recover it. So they'd written off $56 million the year before, so that really impacted last year's result. However, they were able to get $13 million of that back, and so that improved their profit quite a lot. And so we had two local banks, both very good results.
Well done. Now, what's happened on the markets today, Nona?
Actually, it's been very quiet heading into the long weekend. So, I guess people are taking a bit of a break. We've had a very strong week. As you know, we made some record-breaking hits, over 7,000 on the NZX Top 50 Index. So today we're up 1/3 of a percentage point. That's up 21 points on yesterday. That's 7,024. The Kiwi is trading at 68.3 US cents, which is where it was yesterday, and 94.3, also where it was yesterday.
Thank you very much, Nona. Residents of a Taranaki beach settlement say their homes will be swept into the sea unless something is done about erosion at East Beach in Waitara. Huge logs and boulders knocked down fences, flax bushes were washed away, and sections were flooded during the most recent storm. Waito Kurangi Tito has been living at her home in East Beach since 2003. She described the last storm to our Taranaki reporter Robin Martin.
Very scary, and especially when the water comes in the gate and the logs are all piled up on the other side of the fence. It's very, very scary. And yes, we just hope that we don't have to move out, because it's just very pleasant living here. You have the sea out there, and it's just beautiful at times when it's not rough. This morning it was just so flat and beautiful.
Can you sleep at night when you do have those storms?
Oh, not at all. Not when you hear the roar of the sea and you're wondering if it's going to hit the walls. And it has, down further than us. The sea has hit up against the house. Yeah, and the people have had to move out. Yeah.
So you fear that you might have to move out?
Well, we do. If the next big tide comes, which is not too far away, we will possibly have to move out, because it's only last week when it came in the gate. And we're lucky we've got the tin fence there, which kept a bit of it on the other side. But for the neighbours who haven't got a tin fence, the water was right on their lawn.
And how would you feel if you had to move out? Because after all, this is kind of Maori freehold land, ancestral land. How would you feel if you had to move off here?
I'd be very sad if we had to move, because this is a beautiful spot, and we have all superannuants living around us, and it's just so peaceful.
What would you like to see done?
I would like to see the frontage built up like they've done the walkway in New Plymouth.
Resident Tim Papuni's home is more elevated. He told Robin Martin a council-built seawall on the Waitara River seems to be making things worse by funnelling storm surges in front of the houses on the Rohotu block.
It's up around their houses now, that tide. So it's just eating away the ground in front of their houses, then it's starting to eat inside their backyards, you know. So that's all there is to it. You've got to do something about it or lose your land.
So you were describing earlier on the storm surge throwing waves right up. Can you explain what that was like?
Oh yeah, well it was just like we're standing up on top of the hill there, and the waves were just coming through our fence up into the garage. It was like 2 foot, 3 foot of water in the front yard with monster boulders and rocks, and it was moving rocks. Like 300-400 kilo pieces of wood just go through that fence like a twig.
Were you worried for your safety?
I didn't give it much thought. We're up on the hill there a little bit, so no. You know, but we're elevated. They're a lot lower along here than we are.
So how are the people feeling along here?
Well, I went along that night to make sure all the old people were right, like Nuna's and that, and she's staunch to the end. You know, she's going, well, I won't go to sleep yet, but I'll wait for the turn of the tide and let it start dropping away before I go to bed. But she was determined to stay here. And, you know, she's been here for a lot of years, and this is where she lives. So she wouldn't move. And sooner or later, there's going to be one big one that, you know, going to hit those, like this house here. That's right on the edge there. It was right up around their house. And, you know, scary stuff with them.
The New Plymouth Council says it is working with the trustees of the Māori freehold land, but its policy is to only protect significant public assets from erosion. Waitara Community Board member Trevor Dodansky says that's not good enough. He told Robin Martin the council should build a wall to protect the homes.
We need to get stuck into this and get stuck into it real quick. And Taranaki Regional Council and New Plymouth District Council, I know they're trying and talk a lot. Get up, get the machinery out here and start work.
Yeah, I've read that and heard that they feel that they can't do something because it's private land. What's your feeling about that?
They're the ones that took the metal off here and the big boulders off here in the first place. If you go back in history, they took all the big metal out of here to build the road to Mokau. So there we are. So who's at fault here? These people? I don't think so.
That's Waitara Community Board member Trevor Dodansky speaking to our Taranaki reporter Robin Martin. A 7-year-old boy who's been missing for 6 days in northern Japan has been found alive. Yamato Tanuka's parents abandoned him on the side of the road in an area where wild bears are known to roam on Saturday as a punishment for misbehaving. When they went to get him a short time later, he disappeared. The Washington Post bureau chief in Tokyo, Anna Fifield, joins us now on video Skype. Good afternoon, Anna.
Hi, Sharon.
Where was the boy found?
So he was found not hiding, but he was found in a hut on an old military base about 6 or 7 kilometers from the site where the parents left his parents left him. And it was purely by chance, really, that he was discovered. It was by a soldier who was part of a military drill, opened the door to the hut and saw this 7-year-old boy curled up on the mattress in there. And he said to him, "Are you Yamato?" And the boy said yes. And yeah, discovered. Amazing story.
And what kind of condition is he in?
In remarkably good condition, considering he hadn't had any food for 6 days. So he has some dehydration, he had some scratches on his hands and his feet, but in relatively good condition. He was able to answer when the soldier asked him who he was. He was taken to, airlifted by helicopter to hospital, and so there he was treated for dehydration. And obviously he was very hungry after 6 days without food, so the soldier had given him some rice balls, but I imagine he's having a good meal now.
How had he survived for so many days?
Well, the details on that are still a little sketchy. He said to the people who found him that he hadn't had any food, but that there was a tap on the outside of the hut where he was sheltering, and that he'd been drinking from that tap. So that's how he survived, I guess. He must have been indoors inside this hut for most of the time that he was missing.
And have the parents commented yet?
Yeah, his father has been speaking to reporters. He said, obviously, they are overjoyed to have found their son and that he is alive and well. He said that he apologized to his son for leaving him behind and that his son nodded as if to say, okay. And the father described to local TV here that he may have gone a little bit too far in punishing his child, which seems like quite an understatement.
But what is next for the parents? Will they face charges?
There's no word on that yet. There has been some discussion about whether they would be investigated for abandoning their child, but we haven't had any definitive word on that just yet.
Thank you, Anna. That's Anna Fifield in Tokyo. Christchurch residents frustrated with parked cars blocking driveways and taking every vacant space on their suburban streets are hoping a council plan to address the problems may offer some help. Since the earthquakes left most of the central city wiped out, many businesses and shops have headed to the suburbs and brought their parking problems with them. The Christchurch City Council is now looking at whether options like introducing parking meters or resident-only parking in the suburbs could help ease some of those pressures. Rachel Graham reports.
In the last few years, the Christchurch suburb of Addington has transformed from a fringe central city area with a few shops along the main road to a hub with large office blocks, a rugby stadium and numerous bars and restaurants. And with that come cars and parking woes. The chair of the Addington Neighbourhood Association, Sarah McKenzie, says parking has been causing headaches for a few years now.
So people parking right up to the driveways, people couldn't see when they were coming out. I think there was a couple of issues with a few car accidents, not being able to see to cross the road. So I think it's still really frustrating for the residents. And it's kind of both ways, because I guess it's really frustrating for the employees as well, not having suitable parking.
Ms McKenzie says adding to the problem in her area is the work the council did on slowing traffic and narrowing roads in the past.
They changed all of the roads, so they did a beautification already on those areas. So the roads are already made a lot narrower, and then you've got parking on both sides, which causes traffic issues, and two cars can't really fit down the road.
Ms McKenzie says she thinks a new car parking building could help the issue. Providing some form of off-street parking is one of the options the council is considering, along with discouraging parking through time limits or metered parks. The council is currently looking at a range of options to improve suburban parking, with the aim of creating a framework to guide future decisions by the community boards. In the suburb of Mirrorvale, Chris Ainsley says the bus lanes along Papanui Road are pushing people to park in the quiet suburban streets rather than on the main thoroughfare.
People are popping into the side streets and parking there all day, and people I think are quite prepared to walk 10 or 15 minutes, or 10 minutes anyway, to get to work from their car park. So really the whole of Mirrorvale is very choked, and into St Albans as well, of course.
Mr Ainsley, who chairs the Mirrorvale Precinct Society, says it is good to hear the council is looking at the problem, and he thinks residents-only permits could help.
Perhaps in those streets that are a lot closer to the malls could ease some of that congestion for just residents to be able to physically park their cars, or the visitors to residents on their street. Maybe some metered, which would be a terrible thing to see, but to make sure that there's a little bit of churn of cars, that people don't select a good spot in the closer parts of the mall and park up there all day whilst everyone else is stuck.
The proposal will go out to residents' associations and businesses for consultation in about a month, and for wider public consultation next year. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Rachel Graham.
It's 12 minutes to 6. Legal aid lawyers do not believe the government's biggest top-up to the courts in more than a decade will help the people who need it most. But the government says last week's budget allocation of an extra $96 million for legal aid will help almost 3,000 more people through the courts every year. Our reporter Max Toll looked at how that money will be spent.
Legal aid lawyers and community law centres have been crying out for more funding for years. The Associate Justice Minister Simon Bridges says he's listened.
That, I think, is going to give them a real confidence to get on with, the important work that they do in our communities. And I think what we may also see is a good amount of the ability to plan over time, looking at ways they can perhaps share services with other community law centres.
Mr Bridges says the extra money will lead to fewer people representing themselves and the whole system will be more efficient. But not everyone is satisfied. There's a $4 million boost for community law centres, but the Canterbury Centre's manager, Paul O'Neill, says that effectively means their funding stays the same. He says they're buckling under the pressure of more people coming through their doors.
Courts are cut down on front counter staff, so they've got difficulties. People are turning up in courtrooms self-representing, so they're lobbying into law centres essentially. We've had a doubling of family legal aid issues. Amongst that, a lot of them are care and protection of children.
Mr O'Neill says families are struggling to find legal aid lawyers, as many are walking away.
There's obviously a connection there with family violence. If people can't get things like protection orders and struggling to, and we've had people come into our reception here that have called around more than 12 practitioners. Well, we've given them referrals 3 or 4 times of practitioners that might be able to take their case, and they've just continued to rebound back.
The Criminal Bar Association's president, Noel Sainsbury, blames a freeze on lawyers' fees.
It remains unremunerative compared to other forms of legal work, notwithstanding it's probably the most important and probably the most difficult legal work to do. And what the government really relies on is the goodwill of the criminal lawyers who are committed to doing this work to continue to make the system work. But that is not going to be a long-term, ongoing way of running this.
He says it also means fewer younger lawyers are signing up.
I teach Law Society the Introduction to Criminal Law course. It's a prerequisite for doing legal aid. Over 5 years ago, you would have 80 to 120 lawyers a year. This year, we would have had probably about 35, and about half of those are people doing prosecution work or working for government departments.
Mr Sainsbury says people often struggle to find lawyers when they come to court, while the lawyers who remain committed to legal aid work are stretched to their limits. Simon Bridges says he didn't take lawyers' fees into consideration.
That hasn't been a factor in this decision. This has very much been about the end users, low-income New Zealanders who need civil legal aid.
Another issue is the eligibility limit. A single adult must earn less than $22,000 a year to apply for legal aid. A senior family lawyer, David Moore, says many earning more than that still can't afford to pay themselves.
There are people, in my experience, who should be able to get legal aid, but simply can't. They can't get legal aid, and there are people falling through the cracks. Any increase in eligibility is a good thing.
Simon Bridges says those concerns are being met in a $17 million top-up for eligibility, which he predicts will mean 2,700 more people can get legal aid every year. For Checkpoint, Max Toll.
A 7th school has had to close because of a suspected outbreak of measles. 1,300 students at Palmerston North Girls High School are enjoying an extended holiday weekend after their school was temporarily closed today. Since the start of April, there have been 6 schools and 1 alternative education provider that have had to temporarily close their doors because of the virus. Maya Burry reports.
Since an outbreak in Waikato, the measles has spread to Nelson, Northland and Horowhenua, with more than 50 confirmed cases of the measles nationally. More than half of those reports are in the Waikato region, where there have been 33 confirmed and 5 possible cases, resulting in 8 people being hospitalised and 2 high schools in the area temporarily closing. The latest school around the country that has shut its gates is Palmerston North Girls High School. Its principal, Corrine Biggs, says it was a necessary precaution.
We want to get on with learning more than anything else, but we have to be mindful of the danger to our community and be sensible about that. So we will be up and running as soon as we can with as many of our staff as possible. We just have to be sensible about it.
But late today, the test results came back negative. Last month, 1 high school in Northland and 2 schools in Levin told students to stay home, while a special education centre in Nelson had to close for 10 days because of the virus. In most cases, the schools have only closed for a day, with students with proof of vaccination being let back in over the 14-day incubation period of the virus. Mid-Central Medical Officer of Health, Craig Thornley, says the measles is highly contagious.
Between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 are going to get some complications from their infection. These can be severe chest infections, brain infections, potentially even resulting in brain damage or even death. So it can be a very serious illness. and it's so easily transmissible in the community.
Secondary Principals Association President Sandy Pasley says students who aren't vaccinated and have to stay home because of a measles outbreak will be missing out.
It's of concern to the students' learning when it's disrupted by a school closing, and I imagine those schools in the Waikato are quite anxious about the effect it's having on their students' learning.
The Ministry of Health is advising everyone to check they're vaccinated against measles. For Checkpoint, Maya Burry.
Walkers and cyclists taking to pathways around Nelson Airport are often surprised to hear a few brass notes coming from behind the trees and shrubs. Our Nelson reporter Tracy Neal was one of them and discovered the tunes are courtesy of musician Mike Ford, who enjoys getting out of his airport office for a blast during tea breaks.
A brass band playing one night in his childhood town in central Hawke's Bay was enough to inspire Mike Ford on what's been a lifelong musical path.
Well, one Friday night, the Waipakarau Boys Band was playing in a car park outside, and I really liked the sound of that. And I said to Mum and Dad, can I stay and listen to the band while you go and do the grocery shopping? And so they said, yeah, that's fine. So off they went. By the time they got back, I was hooked. And I said, I want to do that. I've been doing it pretty much ever since.
He now plays tenor horn with the National Brass Band of New Zealand. Mike is also a member of Nelson's Hardy Street Brass Council Street Band, the Tasman Brass Ensemble, and he manages the National Youth Brass Band of New Zealand. He often draws on that early experience as a lesson for young musicians.
When I try and encourage little kids, I remember that inspiration comes first of all from being exposed to something and thinking, I want to do that or I want to be like that.
Music has taken Mike around the world. He practices for a couple of hours each day, fitting around his job as Pilot Standards Manager at Air New Zealand's Nelson base.
At times I just feel like I need a break from the office, and so I grab my horn and I disappear down by the river here. I get noticed quite a bit. Quite a few people stop to listen. I think they enjoy it.
So Mike, what does it take to be a top brass player?
I think the first ingredient is inspiration. You've got to be inspired. You've got to see something or hear something and go, you know, I want to do that. That's really, really cool.
And a good set of lungs?
A good set of lungs, yeah. You develop those over time, actually. I was on a leadership course at work a couple of months ago, and out of the blue, they made us hold a breath-holding competition. And everybody had bunged out by about 30 seconds, and after 2 minutes I was still going. So I guess that's one advantage of playing a brass instrument.
Is there any crossover between what you do as a standards manager and an expert musician?
Actually there is. As the standards manager, it's my role to ensure that all of our pilots meet all the regulatory requirements in terms of the training they have to do on an annual basis and the standards that they have to be able to do all the exercises too. So when I'm mentoring some of these people, I'm able to talk to them in terms of what I go through when I'm preparing for a performance, a musical performance. And indeed I use some of those techniques myself. It's to do with being in the moment and thinking about just the job in hand and not worrying about the little man standing on your shoulder saying, whispering in your ear saying, you know, I hope you get this right, I hope you get this right.
Mike is also part of the Wellington Brass Band, and he'll be joining them for a trip to the UK for the British Open Brass Band contest in September. In Nelson for Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
Large parts of France, Germany and Belgium, which have been hit by flooding, are bracing themselves for further torrential rain. At least 10 people have died, most of them in Germany. In Paris, the Louvre Museum has closed to the public to allow some of the works to be moved to safety. This report from the BBC's Hugh Schofield in Paris.
Days of torrential rain have burst the banks of rivers to the south of the capital, and that water is now flowing downstream into Paris, meaning the Seine is at its highest level in 15 years. The Louvre Museum will be shut tomorrow so staff can move artworks out of basement stores. A section of the underground commuter railway that runs by the Seine has also been closed, and there's no access to riverside roads and walkways. To the south, the centre of the medieval town of Namur was completely flooded and hundreds of people forced to leave their homes. In southern Germany, the floods are even more disastrous, with 9 people reported to have lost their lives. In the town of Simbach am Inn, east of Munich, Elsa Seeberger described how she and her grandson escaped the floodwaters.
The water came so fast, it was up to the first floor within 5 minutes. We saved ourselves by going into the attic and attaching red cloths to a broom handle and waved out of the window for people to come and get us. And after about 3 hours, my grandson climbed onto the roof and the helicopter then responded.
The authorities say the waters will reach their peak in Paris at around noon tomorrow. In southern Germany, there are warnings of more rain to come.
And we've had lots of people calling in to us and writing in saying how can they donate to Te Puia Marae. It has a Give a Little page, so you can go to that site and make your donation. We'll be coming up very shortly with the news. Kia ora everyone, you're with Checkpoint with Sharon Brett Kelly on RNZ National on the radio as always, but we're also screening live on Freeview Channel 50 and streaming live on the RNZ website. However you're doing so, thanks for joining us. Tonight, homelessness is on the rise, what a new study has found, what it's like to spend a night in a refugee camp in Lebanon, and the Auckland model who's rocking a prosthetic running blade. But first, here's the news with Katrina Batten.
Ngā mihi nui, good evening. The Salvation Army says false statements by the Prime Minister have jeopardised its ability to work with the homeless. It says John Campbell was wrong when he said Ministry of Social Development staff accompanied Salvation Army personnel on a visit to homeless people in a South Auckland park. Political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
The Salvation Army says the comments weakened its ability to work with the people it had spent 4 weeks building trust with. People who, it says, are very wary of government officials. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister says his comments were based on advice given to him, and he was trying to make the point that homeless people were refusing assistance. The Labour Party says Mr Key has damaged the Salvation Army's ability to work with desperate families in Auckland. The Greens say Mr Key should apologise. From Parliament, Benedict Collins.
A 26-year-old Auckland man was denied bail when he appeared in the Manukau District Court, charged with unlawful possession of a pistol. The charge was laid after a 2-year-old girl was shot dead at her Mangere home yesterday. A large number of family members and friends gathered this afternoon outside the Manukau District Court, where prayers were sung and messages of support for the defendant were shared. The police recovered a sawn-off shotgun from the scene of the shooting and arrested the man a few hours later and charged him. They say more charges may yet be laid. The man, who's been granted interim name suppression, is scheduled to reappear in court on June the 24th. Test results for a suspected case of measles at a Manawatu college have come back negative. Palmerston North Girls High School closed today because of the suspected case, but it turned out to be a false alarm. However, the Mid-Central's District's Medical Officer of Health, Rob Weir, says he's still concerned about the spread of measles, especially as some people who were asked to go into home isolation have not done so. He says that's putting others at risk and adding to the disruption of school and community activities. 14 cases of measles have been confirmed in the district. The 38 people forced to abandon their vehicles in central Otago last month will get the chance to recover them over the weekend. It was thought the four-wheel drive vehicles would be stuck on Waikaia Bush Road over winter, but a contractor has been given the chance to recover them following the granting of an application by the Central Otago District Council. The contractor will use a specially modified bulldozer to pull the cars to a place where the owners will be able to get in and drive off. They'll have a 3-day window in which to retrieve the vehicles. The Central Otago Mayor Tony Lepper told Checkpoint the recovery costs will not be met by ratepayers.
I'm kind of hoping that the silly people who went up there are going to be paying for it, or certainly their insurance companies are. Because going up there the weekend they did was really, in my opinion, quite dumb. So if it costs them a few dollars to get them out, well, bad luck.
Tony Lepper says he's confident the mission will succeed, but there'll be another window this month if it doesn't. Wellington Airport says it's not worried by a review of its case for a runway extension. The review report says once the runway has been extended, only 4 of 9 big jets could safely take off with a full passenger load. Michael Kropp reports.
The airport says it is taking a responsible approach to extending the runway because more than one aircraft type will be able to reach important destinations like Hong Kong and Guangzhou. It says those planes can also fly to nearer destinations including Bangkok, Manila and Kuala Lumpur. The airport says all but 1 of the 9 jets studied could land on the extended runway with a full passenger and freight load. It also says international airlines that do not currently use the airport are satisfied with the proposed extension. The review was commissioned from Astral Aviation Consultants as part of the airport's resource consent application. This is Michael Kropp.
A 7-year-old has been reunited with his parents 6 days after being abandoned by them in a mountainous region of northern Japan. After an extensive search, Yamato Tanuka was found in an army training base about 4 kilometres from where he was left as a punishment for throwing stones. He says he walked through the forest until he found a hut in the base and took shelter. At a news conference, his father, Takayuki Tanuka, apologised for what had happened.
My excessive behaviour caused such pain to my son, and I deeply apologise for the burden caused to the people involved in the search and the school faculty. I've poured all of my love into my son, but from now on, I would want to do more, together with him. I'd like to protect him while he grows up.
The translated words of Takayuki Tanuka, whose son was lost in the mountains. In sport, the former Blues and Chiefs player turned Welsh rugby international Gareth Anscombe expects to play tourist guide for the next couple of weeks. Wales have arrived to play the All Blacks in 3 tests, the first of which is in Auckland tomorrow week. Anscombe, who left to play for the Cardiff Blues in 2014, has played 7 tests for Wales and is looking forward to coming up against a few of his former Super Rugby teammates.
We went out for food last night and the boys got around the waterfront, which was nice to see a bit more of the city. I'm hopefully picking up a car in the next day or 2 and play taxi for the next week. I'm looking forward to taking them around a bit and giving them a good coffee. You don't get that over in Wales, so it's nice to be back.
Gareth Anscombe. There's plenty of international experience in the New Zealand men's hockey team selected for the Rio Olympics. The 16-strong squad includes 4 players who'll be competing at their 3rd Olympics, with captain Simon Child, Ryan Archibald, Shea McAleese and Bradley Shaw having played almost 1,000 tests between them. It's the first Olympics for 8 members of the squad. The New Zealand motorcyclist Bruce Anstey came off his bike in today's practice for the Isle of Man TT. The 10-time TT winner came off at Keppel Gate but walked away with a suspected minor ankle injury. It's not clear if he'll be fit to race this weekend. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, psychology professor Daka Keltner explains the power paradox, or how good people become powerful and then turn nasty. Who knew? Anna Reid is retiring after nearly 30 years fighting for the rights of sex workers. And Branavanganalingam takes a satirical swipe at our surveillance system. Join me, Kim Hill, tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather now through to midnight tomorrow. Northland and Coromandel Peninsula fine apart from isolated showers about the east coasts from tomorrow afternoon. The remainder of the North Island, also Marlborough, Nelson, Buller, Westland and Canterbury, fine with morning frosts in many areas. Otago mainly fine with morning frosts, but areas of low cloud for some lower lying inland areas tomorrow. Southland and Fiordland, a few showers near the coast, gradually clearing tomorrow, mainly fine inland, and the Chatham Islands cloudy periods and the occasional shower. I'm putting on my flannelette sheets tonight. It is coming up to 8 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Katrina. On the day when the Salvation Army hit out at the government over incorrect remarks that it had joined with officials to approach people living in cars, a new study has found growing numbers of homeless people. At least 1 in 100 people are now without a permanent home, according to University of Otago researchers. And that's using numbers based on the official definition of homelessness. The researchers say their analysis of the latest census data shows more than 41,000 people did not have their own home in 2013. Here's our political reporter, Demelza Leslie.
One of the study's researchers, Kate Amore, says the 41,000 people without permanent homes are staying in severely crowded houses with family or friends, or in boarding houses, camping grounds, in cars or on the street. She says the number of homeless has grown by nearly 20% since the 2006 census.
The main thing that leaps out from these latest statistics is how much the growth has accelerated. Between 2001 and 2006, the growth in homelessness was about 8%.
Dr Amore says the government needs to develop a comprehensive housing strategy that includes good quality, low-cost homes.
It's good to have some reliable numbers now that we can start talking about, rather than just the guesses that the government have been making lately. Something needs to be done about affordable housing for people on low incomes.
The Labour leader Andrew Little says the figures are disturbing.
41,000 people homeless, that's just not acceptable in New Zealand, and it reflects very much just an absolute failure on the part of the government to come to grips with what is needed for a housing policy that makes sure that everybody does have a decent, warm, safe, dry place to live in.
The government has repeatedly said it was worried about the homeless situation, but it does not believe it was getting worse. This week it sent out a so-called flying squad to get a handle on the problem in Auckland. Over 4 nights it saw nearly 400 people, both at the Auckland City Mission and in various cars. One person in a car wanted help from the Ministry of Social Development, but they were not homeless. Only 16 people at the Auckland City Mission wanted to talk to the members of the flying squad, and of them 4 are waiting for housing assistance, and a further 7 are now in the system. It's not just the government trying to respond to the homelessness situation. A second marae in South Auckland, Manurewa Marae, is opening its doors to those in need. Manurewa Marae board member Rangi McLean says they hope to help Te Puia Marae with the overflow of people they aren't able to take in.
We're going to look at what we need to put in place here first at Manurewa Marae before we start accepting the families based on how Te Puia carried it out, because they've already done it. We're going to concentrate and prioritise the extra families from Te Puia first, and then have a look at how we're going to open it up wider.
But Mr McLean says it's just a temporary measure.
We're not going to keep our doors open all the time. There's a finite period that the doors of the marae are going to be open to our destitute and homeless families. And once the winter period is over, the government better start working with our marae staff to actually start housing the families that we're taking on.
The Ministry of Social Development says it has staff at Te Puia Marae to support those staying there, and it will continue visiting the Auckland City Mission to make sure people there are getting the help they need. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Demelza Leslie.
Toxicology tests for Prince have concluded the entertainer died from an accidental overdose of the opioid fentanyl. Fentanyl, prescribed by doctors for cancer, is 50 times more potent than heroin and 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, according to the US Drug Enforcement Administration. Here's Gavino Garay.
Medical examiners say an accidental overdose of opioid painkillers was what killed music icon Prince, who was found dead in his Paisley Park compound in April. They say the 57-year-old died after taking the opioid painkiller fentanyl. Earlier reports found that the painkiller Percocet had been found in Prince's system, amid speculation that he was addicted to the pain medication when he died. The 57-year-old died on the eve of a planned meeting with an addiction doctor. But medical examiners say the manner of Prince's death was an accident.
There are now well over 1 million Syrian refugees living in refugee camps in Lebanon. And as the refugees continue to flood into the country as the civil war in Syria rages on, life is becoming increasingly difficult for those living in the camps on Lebanon's border. Andy Robinson is a humanitarian officer for Tear Fund and has just spent the night in the camp with a Syrian family. He joins us now on Skype video. Good afternoon or good evening, Andy.
Good afternoon. Nice to talk to you.
So it's first thing in the morning there, so tell us about your sleep. What was your experience like?
It was a great experience. Not a lot of sleep, to be honest, but some wonderful conversations with the Syrian family late into the night. They had never hosted anyone before, certainly not people from New Zealand, and it was great just to be able to talk, paint stories, show photos of each other's families, just have this time to kind of talk about life and their experience. And
Andy, describe what it's like for this family. I mean, what is their situation? They're in a tent?
This is a family living in a partially built concrete apartment building, just bare concrete walls and floors. It's a young mother who has 5 children and her parents-in-law. They're doing it tough. They struggle every month to pay their rent. They're relying on the goodwill of the humanitarian community to provide food. The father is actually in Europe, and he's hoping to bring his family to Europe, but at the moment that's not happening, so they've kind of lost their primary breadwinner. So they're struggling, they're doing it tough. Certainly where they were living was cramped and small.
And you're obviously able to communicate with this family. What did you talk about?
Yeah, we had a translator with us. The thing we're fascinated about was that people from the country furthest away from Syria come to see them, and they really wanted to share their story. They wanted people to understand how much they enjoyed living in Syria. It was a family that had grown olive trees. That was how they had made their living, and just how their world has just been turned upside down coming to Lebanon, and how they just are struggling, how they wish their children were in school, how they wish they could live somewhere safe, somewhere where their children would have a future.
So what do they do with their day? There's no school for the children, there's no work?
The elderly grandfather, who's really in a lot of physical pain, he has a terrible back, but he tries most. He waits on the side of the road to see if anyone will stop and will take him to get some day labour for the day. And if he managed to do that, he might make about $20. The woman, they actually feel really afraid in their community. They don't like to leave their house because some of their neighbours really treat them with scorn. They're not well received by their Lebanese neighbours, and they're afraid. Yeah, and the children just have nothing to do. They climb trees because they're not at school, and the mum just wishes they could get an education.
Andy, thanks very much for your time. That's Andy Robinson. He's a humanitarian officer for Tear Fund, and he's in a camp in Lebanon. All 4 of the French Tennis Open singles semi-finals will be played overnight tonight if the day's play isn't severely impacted by rain. Heavy rain has meant 2 full days of play at Roland Garros have had to be cancelled, and event organisers are now cramming the remaining matches in to get the tournament completed on time. I asked our sports editor Stephen Hewson what we can expect from tonight's matches.
Yeah, well, we've finally got to the semi-finals, Sharon, despite the rain that's plagued this tournament. We've got the men's top seed, Novak Djokovic, of course, a world number 1. He's up against the 13th seeded Dominic Thiem from Austria. In fact, I suppose Djokovic, though, quite lucky to actually have made it through to the semi-finals. In his quarter-final match, he was given a code violation for throwing his racket, and it almost took out an official, which actually would have seen him quite likely excluded completely from the tournament. So he was lucky that the racket missed. But he's still there. He's won 11 Grand Slam championships, but he's never won Roland Garros. So this is the title that he's hoping that he can finally get in the bag. And of course, with Rafael Nadal not there, he's the clay court specialist and won umpteen titles at Roland Garros. He's had to retire from the tournament injured. His main opponent for Djokovic means Djokovic has got a good run. In the other semi, we've actually got second seed Andy Murray. He's up against the third seed Stan Wawrinka. And in the women's draw, we've got top seed Serena Williams. Now she's playing the unseeded Dutch woman Kiki Bertens, who's just playing in her first Grand Slam semi-final, so she'll be hoping the nerves doesn't get the better of her, but Serena Williams would certainly be the favourite to win there. And in the other semi-final, that's the fourth seed Garbine Muguruza. She's playing the 21st seeded Sam Stosur. So there's been a few women's seeds have dropped by as the tournament's gone on, as you see there that with Serena Williams, the leading light there, and no doubt favoured to go on and win the 2016 Roland Garros title.
And Stephen, the Welsh rugby team has arrived in New Zealand to play the All Blacks with the first test in Auckland next week. So is this the start of the new era for the All Blacks?
Well, it is, isn't it, with the Rugby World Cup back in 2015. This test against Wales next week at Eden Park will be the first test for the All Blacks since winning that title. And of course, it'll be the first without the likes of Richie McCaw and Dan Carter. And Conrad Smith, Mal Nonu, just to name a few of something like 500 test caps that the All Blacks will be missing. Interesting too, they're likely to come up against a former New Zealand player in Gareth Anscombe. Now he played for the Blues and for the Chiefs in Super Rugby before moving to Wales in 2014 to play for the Cardiff Blues, and he's arrived with this Welsh squad, and he was asked just what he thought of the new faces in the All Blacks side.
There's been a few questions about who some of the younger boys are, but we've tried to keep it pretty relaxed so far. I don't think there's not much point getting too caught up in the All Blacks at the moment. But yeah, like a couple of new caps, it's pretty exciting for those boys. The boys watch a bit of Super Rugby. It's on, in the early hours in Wales and the UK. So look, you can't lose 500 Test caps and not feel it. But they're a world-class team, and the guys that they've got coming in, are very handy footballers.
Now, of course, with Gareth Anscombe being a local, several of the Welsh players have been asking him for a bit of advice about New Zealand.
We went out for food last night, and boys got around the waterfront, which was nice to see a bit more of the city. So I guess I'm hopefully picking up a car in the next day or two and play taxi for the next week. But yeah, the boys will get over to Harbour Stadium this afternoon, which is a bit more of my backyard, and I'm looking forward to taking them around a bit and giving them a good coffee. You don't get that over in Wales, so it's nice to be back.
And Stephen, positive news for Valerie Adams winning her straight Diamond League meeting. Is she finally back on form, best form for the Rio Olympics?
Well, yeah, she had a very rough year last year in 2015. She's had a series of surgeries over the past couple of years, elbow, knee, shoulder. But yeah, she's won the last two straight Diamond League meetings. This latest one was in Rome. She won the previous one in Hungary just a week or so back. She had a best throw of 19.69 metres, and that was 70 centimetres better than her nearest rival. So the indications are that she's finding some form again. Of course, she's not quite back at the sort of distances she was throwing when she wasn't under an injury cloud. She was throwing over the 20-metre mark. But certainly good indications with just a couple of months out from Rio that Valerie Adams may well be in the kind of form that could see her defend her Olympic title.
It's 21 past 6. Coming up, the New Zealand model with a prosthetic leg who's hoping to inspire others. But first, kapahaka fused with crumping, Beyonce poi and opera are just some of the fun events marking Matariki, the Māori New Year. Celebrations are getting underway as the stars begin to align, the cold sets in and people reflect on the last 12 months. Laura Bootham from Te Manu Korehi has more.
Le Moana, a dance company specialising in Pacific contemporary dance and theatre, paid homage to Matariki with a performance at Poreroa's Pātaka Art and Museum last night. Its artistic director, Tupe Lualua, says the performance recognised a milestone in a man's life, getting a tā moko or facial tattoo.
the passages that we go through as humans, and whether they be cultural passages, whether they be rituals. In this specific piece that we're creating for Whare Mātoro, for Matariki, looks at a young man and his journey in getting tāmoko, or tatau, which we call it in Samoa.
While Māori experts say traditionally Matariki occurs at the end of the month, many celebrate it throughout winter. The project manager for Matariki at Te Papa, Mary Boynton, says when a cluster of stars known as the Pleiades or the Seven Sisters appears in the sky, it signals change.
When Pleiades rises in the sky, it's a reminder to Māori that this is a changing of seasons. It symbolises a chance to regenerate, to renew. The papa, the whenua, goes into a state of hiatus. So everything slows down and goes to sleep, and we wait for spring.
She says, along with a performance from Le Moana, Te Papa will be celebrating Matariki with more than 100 rangatahi performing their fun take on kapahaka at Te Whare Mātoro, or House of Entertainment, this weekend.
They're creating 6-minute kapahaka performances that are fused with crumping, Beyonce poi. So it's going to be a really fun take on kapahaka. So you'll see a real mix-up, and we're giving them the opportunity to show off, basically.
Māori dancers from Le Moana Dance and Theatre Company all have their own personal take on Matariki, including India Gibbs.
Celebrating Manawahine, the Seven Sisters, and then being a Māori woman along with my Māori sisters, dancing along for Matariki is always special, just to celebrate culture, really.
While Amanda Noblet says it's a time to bond and reflect.
We always get together, even though it may not be on the day. So sometimes, we have to work on Matariki, so sometimes Matariki's on the weekend for me and my family. But we always get together, it's about food, it's about culture, it's about sharing stories from the year before, and also, I'm putting down some goals and some points for the year ahead.
Kia ora. Anything you want to add?
Happy Matariki, tātou!
As well as being accomplished dancers, they can rustle up an alternative to Auld Lang Syne on the spot, and their excitement about the new year is catching.
Happy Matariki, happy Matariki.
For Checkpoint, ko Laura Bootham Dene.
A young New Zealander with a prosthetic leg is hoping to inspire people around the world. Aucklander Jess Quinn broke her leg playing soccer when she was 9. After it failed to heal, doctors found a cancerous tumour on her thigh bone. Chemotherapy followed and then amputation. But the experience hasn't held her back. Today she's an AUT student, Nike brand ambassador and model, whose Instagram followers number almost 60,000. In her spare time, she mentors young cancer patients who are undergoing similar operations. A recent photo shoot of Jess in sportswear with her prosthetic running blade on show has been shared around the world, and the response has been huge, Jess. So tell us about this photo shoot. How did it come about?
The photo shoot was kind of something I just wanted to do to show people how I was wanting to kind of project my image and, I guess, address social media. And I think for me, there's a lot of falseness going on social media and people projecting themselves in a light that's not true to them, or trying to fit into this cookie cutter mold of perfection. And I kind of just wanted to use my own experiences, and I've always heard from people, you're so inspiring, you've helped me through this and that, and I kind of just wanted to kind of combine that and do a photo shoot to kind of help people as such, and kind of see where it could take me and get it to brands and kind of help change the face in how we advertise.
So how did it work? Did you approach Nike, or did they come to you?
Nike's just a love of mine, so I kind of just I've got a lot of support from the team at Nike here, but I choose to wear Nike on a daily basis. So the photo shoot was, something I kind of arranged with John O'Parker, who was my photographer, and he's incredible and kind of had the same vision that I had, and we worked together to, really get this photo shoot going, and neither of us expected the response that it got. So I kind of put it on social media and just expecting to kind of show people what I had. I had about 1,000 followers at the time. And it was a confidence booster for me as well. The blade was quite new to me at the time, and just to kind of combine my sport and fashion background together, and really, just kind of put this idea across that's something a little different.
So you say you were surprised by the impact that it had. I mean, what kind of response have you had from people about it?
Yeah, I was blown away. I still am blown away. So the photos, I got a really good response straight away. I was getting messages from people from all walks of life, which was the goal for me. The goal isn't, I was worried about being put into this disabled modelled category or models with adversity, which I'm fully supportive of, but I didn't want to be put into one specific category, if you like. And so the response I got reached out by people in the Marine Corps and just saying, you've really helped us through some tough times, just finding inspiration through me, and other people dealing with cancer and other people who've had amputations, and then also just young girls and guys who have just got small insecurities or big insecurities, that kind of just as I guess as big to them as mine are to me, and I think that was the coolest thing for me, is that it has kind of just sat so well with so many different people, which is what the goal was.
So tell us about the blade. I mean, how long have you had it? How long have you been running with it?
I think I've had the blade for about 9 months. I've been properly running for about 3 weeks on it. I've been training for the whole 9 months, but the first, I guess, 8 months was just me doing core stability, and there's a lot. I mean, I haven't run for 15 years, so I haven't used those muscles, and obviously I had quite a complex surgery, so I'm using muscles in a completely different way than what they were made for. So I spent a lot of time working on my glutes and my core and just my stability and kind of the control with the blade, because it's completely different to the prosthetic that I have.
And you're aiming for some major event with it?
Yeah, I don't have a specific event in mind, but I'm aiming for 10Ks before 2017, so that's the goal.
Right. So you do a lot of amazing things. What is the thing that you love to do the most?
I mean, I love it all. I love the fact that I can reach out to so many different people. I consider myself lucky to have this platform that I have and have this opportunity to help people. And with that comes with my mentoring the other cancer patients and people going through similar surgeries. And people often, want to think that's quite tough on me, but it's not. I love it, and I love to be able to it's like home for me going up to the hospital, which kind of sounds a bit funny, but it's so nice to go back into that environment. And I think I enjoyed seeing people who'd come out the other end when I was in hospital, so having that to be that person for somebody else is amazing.
That's wonderful. Thanks for coming in, Jess.
Thank you.
Great. And that's Jess Quinn. Well, that's Checkpoint for this evening. Thanks for joining us on your radio, your television, online, or however you choose to connect with us today. You can hear highlights in late edition at 10 this evening, or 10:15 this evening, or any of our stories tonight on rnz.co.nz/checkpoint. John Campbell will be back behind the Checkpoint desk next Tuesday. Until then, from me, Sharon Brett Kelly, and the Checkpoint team, enjoy your Queen's birthday weekend.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Salvation Army says its ability to work with the homeless has been jeopardised by false statements made by the Prime Minister. Interim name suppression has been granted to a 26-year-old Auckland man charged with unlawfully possessing a pistol after a 2-year-old girl was shot dead in Mangere yesterday. A 7-year-old boy has been reunited with his parents 6 days after being abandoned in a mountainous region.